Brothers, could we please take our seats so we can continue the meeting? Who are the people wanting your documents?
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We just know where that's coming from. Thank you, brothers, and we'll continue on. We are dealing here with the general question of faithful citizenship. Brothers, although the 2020 election cycle may seem far off, it is that time again to consider the question of the faithful citizenship document. As you may recall, we have customarily had the document finalized and approved as of about a year before the election. So that would be November of 2019. This allows for the production of promotional and other secondary materials and otherwise to assure strong distribution and implementation. It has generally taken about a year to get the document from initial draft to final approval. So already, that would bring us back to November of this year, 2018. In addition, under conference procedures for a document of this type, the body must first indicate whether it wants such a document at all before any drafting may even begin. And so that is the decision before us today, just as we did at the June 2014 meeting in relation to the 2016 elections. Now we are kicking off the process in June of 2018 in relation to the 2020 elections. I must say we're doing it a little earlier this time, and the reason is, as I was involved in the last one, and there were lots of sentiments expressed about what to do in a further document, I thought we should begin this early. As detailed in the action item before you, the process we have now started tracks the one we have followed in the past. First, back in March, I put the matter before the Administrative Committee, which had a thoughtful and fruitful discussion on the subject. From that, a working group from the Administrative Committee reviewed the minutes of that discussion and developed them into a concrete proposal to put before you for action today. I would emphasize that the action proposes an overall direction and seeks your authorization for the working group to pursue it over the months to come. This is the beginning of the process, not the end. The finished product would not come before this body for a final vote until November of 2019. As in the last cycle, the working group is chaired by the conference vice president, now Archbishop Gomez, and consists of the elected chairman of the committees and subcommittees whose mandates intersect with this enterprise. Those chairmen are now as follows: Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Pro-Life Activities; Archbishop Timothy Broglio, International Justice and Peace; Archbishop Charles Chaput, Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth; Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller, Cultural Diversity in the Church; Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, Religious Liberty; Archbishop Alan Vigneron, Doctrine; Bishop Robert Barron, Evangelization and Catechesis; Bishop James Conley, Promotion and Defense of Marriage; Bishop Frank Duane, Domestic Justice and Human Development; Bishop Shelton Fabre, Ad Hoc Committee Against Racism; Bishop John Quinn, Catholic Education; and Bishop Joe Vasquez, Migration. Since the March Administrative Committee meeting, that working group has met by phone and has developed the proposal before you today, based on the minutes of the March Administration Committee and their own further deliberations. With that, I would now like to introduce Archbishop Gomez, who will describe the proposal and its rationale. Then we will have some discussion and put the question to you for a vote. I would underscore once again that the vote today marks only the beginning of this process, and we are not debating the contents of any document. That ultimate question will come before us again next year. And so, Archbishop Gomez.
Thank you, Cardinal Dinardo. Good morning to everyone. So as Cardinal Dinardo mentioned, this process began with a discussion at the March Administrative Committee. Then we continued the conversation at a teleconference from the working group that Cardinal Dinardo asked me to convene. This action item does not propose to change our faithful citizenship document. In fact, all our discussions affirm the continued value of the document. What we hope to do with this action item is to increase the document's influence by giving our people further resources to live out its teachings and perspectives. So through this action item, we are proposing two things. First, we are proposing to write a shorter letter to inspire our people to greater prayer and reflection and involvement in public life. And second, we want to produce secondary resources such as videos, social media, brochures, and bulletin inserts, again, with the purpose of motivating our people to become faithful citizens. Why do we think that this is necessary? Because while faithful citizenship continues to have lasting value as a resource for bishops and priests and state Catholic conferences, we are all aware that the document, I have to say, is too long and not particularly accessible or practical in helping the ordinary faithful in the pews. Also, the Administrative Committee and Working Group felt that while faithful citizenship already does an excellent job of conveying information, it is missing the element of inspiration or motivation. So in the process of learn, pray, act, faithful citizenship does a good job of helping our people to learn. So the task before us is to motivate the faithful to pray and to act. Finally, as you see in the action item, our discussions suggested three general themes for the content of the shorter letter that we propose to write. First, faith is prior to partisan politics. Faith should shape each person's views of politics and not vice versa. We are Catholic first, members of a political party second, or third, or fourth. So that's the first thing. Second, we are called to be faithful citizens at all times. The faithful should participate in political life continually, not just in election years. And third, our political discourse should reflect civility, respect for every person at all times, no matter how strong the disagreement over policy. This is necessary, as we know, for the common good. I hope that this summarizes well the discussions that inform our proposal today. So with that background, brothers, I will welcome your questions and discussion.
Brothers, the floor is open for your discussions and interventions. Cardinal Cupich.
Then Bishop Stowe.
Thank you, Archbishop, and I thank the work of the various committees that are involved. I think it would be a missed opportunity and a big mistake not to move forward with an entirely new document, and this is for two reasons. First of all, there is a new body of teaching that we have in the church offered by Pope Francis on a whole host of issues, from climate change to poverty, immigration, which of course was discussed yesterday. And the way that he presents those topics seems to me to be a body of teaching that we need to integrate in what we're talking to our people about. But even more importantly, and you alluded to this already, our discussion and even argumentation over various issues that we disagree about has the potential to model how public civil discourse should take place in our country. Our people have very few examples today of how that should take place. We have instead people who shout at each other. We have blog posts and websites in which people live in their own isolated, polarized existence. I think that even if it means that we have to stand up and discuss and, yes, disagree with each other, we can do our people and our nation a great favor to model how that should take place. So I will be voting against this proposal.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Let me just say that we talk about starting a new document, but it's a very long process. First of all, I think the document that we have is very good. Theologically, and in the last edition, I'm sure that you all have seen it, in the last edition of 2015, we already included a lot of quotes and different ways in which we try to incorporate the teachings of Pope Francis. So I think, obviously, it's up to you all what we are going to do, but I think we can, through that letter that we are talking about, maybe, address some of the concerns that you have.
Bishop Stowe, followed by Bishop Boyer.
Thank you, Archbishop Gomez and the working group. I want to first say that I'm only partially opposed to the proposal because I think the idea of the shorter letter and the videos are very well reasoned, and I think deserving of our support, especially because of the lack of attention that faithful citizenship gets and the lack of use throughout the church and the accessibility issue that you describe. I would argue for a new document, however, for many of the reasons that Cardinal Cupich has already elaborated, and principally because of the different contexts that we find ourselves in after the last national election. With the U.S. withdrawing from the Paris Accords on climate, and we see the aggressive rollback of so many environmental policies, especially those that affect the Appalachian region where I am. We think about the immigration issues that we've discussed at length yesterday, and when we talk about our outreach to youth, a good number of our youth are dreamers, are the DACA, and there's an urgency there that wasn't there at the time of the last national election. I think because of our withdrawal from the Iran agreement, the issues of disarmament are before us once again, and nuclear proliferation in a way that they weren't at the previous election. I don't see much in the current faithful citizenship document about gun control. And we've seen the young students really rise up in our country and say that something needs to be done about violence in our schools. And I think if the church doesn't have something to say about those issues, we're missing a very important opportunity, especially as we want to reach out to youth and incorporate them more fully in the life of the church. I think healthcare issues, again, are in need of greater consideration, and the priorities as they are presented in faithful citizenship are going to be looked at in a new context, a new environment. So I think it needs to be completely reworked, the document itself. Even though our teachings don't change, the context changes and the priority of issues change. And so I'd appreciate the opportunity to work again on that document. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Archbishop Gomez, just a question. Does this proposal that we're being asked to vote on have an impact on the budget? Are we able to pay for the added work that's going to be done?
That's a good question. Do you mean, if it's the same document, there is no problem with the document, for the budget. If it's a new document.
We're being asked to do new things, though. Those are all new things.
Oh, that's okay, yeah.
I don't think so, that it would have.
No?
We were told no.
They are telling me no, so.
Bishop Warfel, followed by Bishop McElroy.
I appreciate the work of the committee, and I echo much of what has been said already. In Montana, and the document has not been really well received in the sense because it's, I think, taken as stale. And so I would like to see at least some updating with all the new context that we're facing that has just been outlined by Bishop Stowe and Cardinal Cupich. There's not much in the document with the thought of Pope Francis. I think it really needs to be something that is more incorporative of the magisterium of Francis. And I was at a committee meeting for CCHD on Monday, and one of the lay members said that they thought there should be some kind of a framework for how to make a decision with the issues, and suggested it be at the very back of the document and with the inspirational materials, helping people how to make a decision with all the issues, as opposed to focusing on just one particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Warfel.
Bishop McElroy, followed by Cardinal Tobin.
I want to thank the task force for working on this question, and I'm in sympathy with so many of the conclusions you've reached. The three themes you talk about are really central to what we should be doing as bishops. And I think the departure from that lengthy document makes a great deal of sense. However, I think we should not go down this general pathway. We are living in a moment in which we witness the greatest assault upon the rights of immigrant peoples of the past 50 years. Mm-hmm. We live in a nation with a racial and geographic and regional divides in which people of color feel victimized by institutional prejudice and violence, and many white working class men and women feel dispossessed. We live in a time in which children are afraid to go to school because they may be killed. We live in a time in which we have the great challenge of bringing to the millennial generation an understanding that the instrumentalization of human life at the beginning of life and at the end is unacceptable, and why law should touch upon that. And yet, as we see our institutions, legal and political, being distorted and atrophying, we need to speak to these questions, and we need to speak as a collective body of bishops. The one striking thing about this, it has many elements, this proposal. The one striking thing is there is no comprehensive statement by the bishops as a whole. And I believe we're living in a moment when there should be a comprehensive statement from us as a whole, from the whole of the body, reflecting upon the signs of the times we are in. Now, some have suggested that we use the 2015 Faithful Citizenship to make that statement, that it still endures. And yet we're in a different moment, a radically different moment. And faithful citizenship has two great defects of 2015. One, as Cardinal Cupich indicated, it does not reflect the full-body teaching of Pope Francis, specifically in Gaudete et Exsultate, the declaration that the issues of poverty, migration, and the environment are not secondary, but are among the primary issues of claim upon the conscience of believers in public policy. Our document doesn't do that, and it undermines that teaching through its tendentious use of intrinsic evil. But even more fundamentally, the reason 2015 faithful citizenship cannot be the foundational document for us moving forward in this election cycle is that it cannot be engaged at the signs of the times of the moment we are living with, as Bishop Stowe mentioned. Because on the critical moments we are going through that traumatize us as a country, it is silent. Regarding the rescission of DACA, it is silent. Regarding Charlottesville, silent. Parkland, silent. Faithful citizenship of 2015 cannot be our response to the moment we are living in. It cannot engage with the signs of the times. It can only engage with the signs of the past. And we should not put it forward, I believe, as our statement in the coming quadrennial election cycle. The people of our country and the people of our church need us to have a more succinct, comprehensive statement from the whole of this body that speaks to this moment and that helps provide guidance, and that we wrestle together. And yes, we will have to wrestle, not because we have substantive difference among us on most of these policy issues, but because have differences of our understanding of the saliency, the relative saliency of these issues in moving forward to accomplish the common good at this moment in our history. But we should have a statement from us as a whole, and it should be embedded in Catholic teaching as it is now, and in the signs of the times of this very difficult moment of turmoil in our country that we are living in. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop McElroy. I suppose that that to really be able to do what some of the brother bishops are saying, we need a totally different document. But then it's going to be a really, because there are a lot of good things in this document. So what is good in this document for all, then to add all the challenges that we are going to have, as has been described by the different brothers, it's going to be a really long document. So that's what we were thinking, that instead of doing another document, then address all of those issues in a different way. Is that correct, Karina? That's what we were thinking at the working group.
From the working group and from what the administrative committee said, there was an agreement at that time that we would move ahead using the substance of the former document, or of the document we have now, because it's a teaching document, and not some of the brethren are moving us more in a slightly different direction on this. But hey, that's why we're discussing it. That's
right.
Why we're doing it.
All of this is absolutely valid, and I think they're very good points. So I think it's good that we're talking about it.
Cardinal Tobin, followed by Bishop Coyne.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I'd like to also join my voice in thanking the members of the working group for your reflection on this. And I'd like to thank the bishops that have raised respectfully, as I'm going to do too, reasons against this proposal. I believe that the need for new content has been laid out by a number of the previous speakers. I won't repeat them. What I would like to add something else. I believe that the single greatest challenge that we face as a church is the chasm between faith and life. That faith has been privatized. We've allowed that to happen. We struggle to keep our own belief relevant in our behavior and the choices we make. And I think because of that, Pope Francis can aid us in an integral view of holiness that was put out most recently in Gaudete et Exultate, where he shows us that the choices that we make in faith under the influence of grace helps us take particular stances in the public square. So I think that that last apostolic exhortation alone probably argues in favor of a new document. In my opinion, it does. The last point I would make has to do with process. I think that as a conference, we need to at least question the process we have that we currently follow, because it delays in incredibly prompt and thorough and reflective responses on behalf of the conference itself. I think I would respectfully submit that the long process that we're taking to produce a pastoral statement on racism is an example of this. At least it should be questioned, the length of time. Here we're a year and a half out from the elections, and we're saying we don't have enough time. I think that the process at least has to be questioned, and if it's the best process, we'll stick with it, but maybe there's a better way of doing things. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Bishop Coyne.
If I remember the last time we dealt with this document and we decided to move it along with an actual letter for the next election, we had some numbers in terms of the effectiveness of the document itself. That, in other words, we asked voters, did they, and our Catholic voters and in the pews, did you refer to this document? Did you read it? Did it inform you? And if I remember, the numbers were not that good. And now we've gone through it again once again. And my question would be, do we have any statistics to prove any effectiveness to this document? Do we have any way in which we've measured it as even being, as it is now in its present form, to show that, in fact, it's being read, it's being used, it's informing us? Because I know we saw it the last time, I believe. We don't have it now. So that's my first question to the body of bishops. The second one is more just if you're going to make a challenge, then can you give a solution? If we may not be able to produce a document, but we can certainly produce resources that clearly spell out the positions of the conference on serious matters of conscience and on voting. And we could make reference, as kind of a stopgap thing that's going to take so long to roll out, as Cardinal Tobin raised, as kind of a stopgap to say, while we're working on this document, this is a place you can go on the website, this is a pamphlet you can use. They do it all over the United States in terms of voter information pamphlets as you go to vote. So I would say my first is the informational question, and the last is to offer perhaps a solution to where we're going, or if we decide to table the document as it is.
Thank you, Archbishop. Thank you, everybody, for the comments. I just want to make a quick point from the standpoint of the working group. We're very aware of what I'd call this, Franciscan shift, that something really different is happening, and that we have to reflect that. Our concern was we already have this long document that most of us agree very few people read. Now we reconfigure and lengthen it to make it even less accessible. That's what we're concerned about. When we talk about a video, we're not talking about simply some little supplementary thing off on the side, but something really new, something really fresh, and that will more likely be taken in, especially in those under 50, under 45. So we very much want to reflect this great Franciscan shift in emphasis. Our fear is that we'd have to retain a lot of the things in faithful citizenship, which are very well presented, well argued. We'd just be making a much longer document. That was the concern. It was really about accessibility, readability, and we felt that something like a video, even though that can sound less substantive than a document, actually might be a much more effective means of communicating the very concerns that have been raised. So I think that was the motivating factor behind a lot of it.
But in response to what Bishop Barron just raised, though, the fact is videos are they only serve on the digital media if they're less than 3 minutes long. I mean, once you go past 3 minutes, viewership just falls off the map, regardless of how good the video is. So, I mean, I would say there's only so much we can do in a video to kind of, correct, add to, supplement this document. So I really think we need to rethink the document and to start the work now because it takes so long, but to do something like the videos and other things in the meantime to at least help people make good decisions or make informed decisions.
Thank you, Bishop Coyne.
Do we have other brothers who want to make intervention? Yes.
Bishop Soto.
Bishop Soto. Who else do we have?
And Lori.
Bishop Lori.
I go along with a lot of the thoughts that we, while obviously there are teachings that need to remain consistent and firm. That we also, I think, again, we're in a new moment, and perhaps we have to look at a new paradigm as to how best to present that. And I would offer that Pope Francis, particularly in Laudato Si, when he speaks about integral human ecology, offers us a moment to challenge the political process itself, and that there seems there's reasonable question that our political process is it's failing, and that there are some grave weaknesses there, and addressing the issues, the larger issues, which are important to do, doesn't get at looking at how we as a people govern ourselves, and how the current system is failing to allow people to self-govern, and to guide, to look for the common good, and so I am persuaded by a lot of the concern that perhaps that we can't just look at redoing faithful citizenship, but that we have to really look at a new paradigm as to how we do that. And maybe that's in part looking at how we present our tradition, and then at the same, and also looking at the means that we use to do that. And so I'm just concerned that the current proposal, as it is, may not get us there.
Thank you, Bishop Soto.
Archbishop Lori, followed by Bishop Strickland.
Thank you very much. Just building on what Bishop Barron said, I think we have to remember who the audience of these documents is. As it is developed, the audience for faithful citizenship is probably not most people in the pews, unless they happen to be policy wonks. Really, it's state Catholic conference directors, it's the clergy, it's ourselves. And so it has really become a kind of a compendium of our teaching. And while we can talk about reworking it and revising it to make it both a compendium and inspirational, that is a very tall challenge. And I doubt that we could produce something that would accomplish both. And so I would think that the proposal to develop shorter, more consumer-friendly types of resources, which we as bishops would improve and endorse, would accomplish the goals that I think we had set out for ourselves. So thanks to the working group for its proposal.
Thank you, Archbishop.
Bishop Strickland, followed by Bishop George Thomas.
I think Archbishop Lori really captured sort of a combination of what I'm thinking as I listen to the conversation, and I really appreciate this. I think we've touched on a lot of important things. Process, I think, is a key element of how we address these kinds of issues. I think Archbishop Lori hit on something very important, that we need to maybe make a distinction between what is instructional and supportive to all of us as bishops and what is sort of on the delivery system to the public. I guess the question I would raise, or the proposal, would be, what I'm hearing is we need to connect with that panel of 3 young people that we heard so much important information from yesterday. We need to ask them, how can we reach them and those who are maybe not are on the peripheries, but really looking at 2 different questions in a sense of what best supports us in being united in proclaiming the truth, and also how do we deliver it to especially the young people that were mentioned, because the coming election is mostly about them.
Thank you, Bishop Strickland.
Bishop George Thomas, followed by Bishop Paprotky.
There's a famous Eleanor Roosevelt adage, and she said, if I had taken more time, I would have written a shorter letter. I think that that is one of the inherent difficulties with the present document, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. It is lengthy, it's cumbersome, and I think the audience that it reaches is in fact what Bishop Strickland said, and that would be conferences and likely clergy who take time to read it. It does, in my opinion, miss the mark, reaching the hearts of the ordinary people that we have an obligation to serve and obviously to form conscience. I think it also has, there are two other lacunae that I think need to be addressed, serious lacunae. We have a very teachable moment with the present Holy Father, who I believe is offering both substance and style that need to be captured. Under substance, the Holy Father is connecting worship and compassion, sacristy and service, liturgy and justice, always with his eye on a preferential option for the poor. And under style, and especially given the toxicity of the moment, the political climate, this Holy Father is teaching us to prefer dialogue over diatribe, persuasion over polemics, invitation over invective, and always accompaniment over alienation. I think that we would do well to take his example, take the content of his teaching, and create a shorter, user-friendly letter that will reach the hearts of our people at a time when they need us most. That's my hope.
Thank you, Bishop Thomas.
Bishop Paprotky, followed by Bishop O'Connell.
Thank you. On the flight here to our meeting in Florida, just looking at the people around me, I noticed that I didn't see anybody reading. Almost everybody was watching either the overhead screen that was being presented on the flight, or they had their own screens in front of them, videos, iPads, smartphones, whatever, watching videos. And so I would really like to support what Bishop Barron was talking about in terms of, I think that is really the medium if we want to reach people. I don't think another lengthy document is going to be read by a lot of people. I think if we have the medium of the video, I think that would be a way that we can accomplish that task. And so I speak in support of the proposal here. If I could offer a friendly amendment, however, instead of simply a video, I would propose a series of videos. Right. And I think that's in keeping with the spirit of what you're talking about, given what Bishop Coyne, I think, pointed out very well. You know, if we have a 5 or 10 minute video, and this is the video, people, you know, they may see it once, but I think if we had a series of short videos that could touch on a number of the different topics that have been raised here, I think we can reach a vastly wider audience and be able to communicate that message much more effectively.
Thank you, Bishop Paprotky. I think that's our idea, a letter that includes all of the issues that we are talking about, especially everything that has to do with Pope Francis' theology and ministry, and also a series of videos where we address the different, even the same issues or other issues that are important for the people, to be able to reach out to people everywhere, because if we come up with another huge document, not too many people are going to read that. Thank you. Thank
you. Bishop O'Connell, followed by Bishop Botein.
Yes, some of what I was going to say has already been said, but I want to just say that I have thought for a while now, for a few years, that we do need to take some time to think about how Pope Francis's teachings inform our pastoral practice, what has changed in the way we engage with people in the neighborhoods and those who are suffering, but also that Pope Francis' teaching can help us a lot to think about a lot of the very neuralgic issues that are raised in our society right now. So I also want to just say I agree with the proposal in that this kind of a short letter and videos and call to action, call to reflection will be very helpful, and that we can, I think, as a way of presenting Pope Francis' teaching and our own teaching over the years in a more galvanizing way, in a way that gets deeper into our pastoral life and into our response to all the issues that are happening around us.
Thank you, Bishop O'Connell.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Archbishop. You have something to say. Bishop Botein, followed by Bishop Corver.
Thank you, and thank you to the working group for the work that you've done. I have to admit, I'm a little bit conflicted by this because I'm very much in favor of short and video. I think these are very, very important things, and so I think it would have been maybe helpful to us for us to have a sense of what was intended to be said in these documents, in this media. We heard an interesting word yesterday that I think is a matter for some serious reflection, cardiosclerotic. I think it was Gandhi who said that what made him the saddest was the hardness of hearts of the educated class. And so forgive me for quoting Gandhi, but in any event, I think what we are running the risk of right now is appearing that we either don't care or aren't paying attention. And I think we can overcome that without going back into the document itself. The Church doesn't feel any need to revise the catechism every time there's a cataclysm. You know, every time there's a cultural shift, seismic shift, such as we're experiencing right now, the catechism doesn't get revised, and perhaps forming consciences for faithful citizenship should pass into the memory of the documents, the history of the documents of the conference, and something new altogether, which I understand will take quite a while to put together. But I'm afraid that what we have is a reputation for taking too long to address the situations that occur in our country, and I wish we could find some way of being somehow a little more flexible so that we don't get the impression that we're just thrilled with the status quo or that we're not paying attention. I think the idea of needing to model the kind of thing that's missing from the political landscape now is very important, and that is loving disagreement and working together. I don't think the document itself is a means of encounter with our people, no matter what side of whatever particular issue they are on, and we need to find a way of engaging them a little bit more for the sake of love itself, for the sake of unity itself, for the sake of the body of Christ itself. Otherwise, I fear that and I know we're not really trying to give the impression that we're not paying attention or don't care. But whatever it is that we do produce, I think it needs to be a forceful and strong statement that is, in a sense, perhaps a call to repentance and on the part of all of us. And so I'm not exactly sure how I would otherwise vote, because I think the proposals are very good, and I realize that we have to take the time to put together a perhaps more forceful statement that will be engaging. But I think the idea that we should be satisfied in any sense with faithful citizenship as it is and give that impression, even if we're not, I think it's a dangerous public statement to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I got the information about the percentage of people that have used or read the Faithful Citizenship. This is from in 2011. The CARA study indicates that 16% people that were interviewed have used or read the document. Only 16%. No, not too many people.
Bishop Corver, followed by Archbishop Brody.
This is my first time to the microphone, so please have mercy on me. It is my third meeting, however, and I do have a concern, and it was just echoed a moment ago speaking about the status quo. I've learned in the 3 meetings the hard work that's done by the committees and how difficult it is to put these documents together, and I want to honor and respect that. But I am concerned about revising documents that are 16 and 11 years old. The Charter, 2002, Faithful Citizenship, 2007. I'm even concerned about continuing to approve liturgical documents that are the result of the Eisel and Vaux Clara controversy of many years ago. By just revising these documents, as was already mentioned, does it show that we are listening, especially to the young church? And are we listening to new arrivals in the United States? And so I know the work is hard to start fresh, but I really am concerned if we keep publishing documents that have copyright 2002, 2015, and now 2018. And a lot of the people that are going to be reading them were barely born when the document was first written. And so I think we really, it would serve us well to try to develop, as Cardinal Tobin mentioned, maybe some new structures. But the status quo, I just don't think works anymore. And revising the status quo, I will be voting against.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop.
Archbishop Rodi, followed by Bishop DiMarzio.
There's probably great wisdom in looking at videos to get a message out, especially with younger Catholics. The preparation that goes into written statements can be lengthy. But the advantage of a written statement is that we know that voices from throughout the conference have been heard, and that this is something that's been considered and expresses the will of the conference. If we have videos, will they be issued as, in a sense, a statement of the conference? And if so, how have the members of the conference have input in what is articulated in the videos? That would be a concern, that in effect, a video becomes a statement of the conference. How does it reflect the will of the members of the conference?
Thank you, Archbishop.
Bishop DiMarzio, followed by Bishop Elizondo.
The purpose, I think, is forming consciences for faithful citizenship. How are consciences formed today? They're not really formed by reading things. They're formed by the media. I think, again, the proposal has to be lengthened out a bit. So what kind of video are we talking about? Are we going to pay to put it on CNN and pay to put it on Fox? All these things, so people will see what we're saying. It is a question of resources here. Just not the time of doing the document. I worked on the document, the first one that's being talked about. Certainly not perfect, but it did get the consensus of the whole body, the 400, I think we had 2 votes against it, which was incredible. But I think if we want to form a conscience, how are consciences formed today? Not by us, but by the media, by what they see in the public forum. We've got to be there, so there's a different kind of approach we need to take. So yes, this needs to be worked on. The document could be revised, but how are we going to get it out? That's the key thing.
Thank you, Bishop DiMarzio.
Bishop Elizondo, followed by Bishop Nestout.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Though the majority of the people that are Hispanics in this country are not documented, and because of that, they are not going to be able to vote, they certainly need a lot of our accompaniment and our presence, and especially the young people that we were discussing at length yesterday, that they will feel that we, the church, are present with them, all the dreamers and the DACA people that is very much in need of support right now. And of course, especially with the Quinto Encuentro, is a wonderful opportunity for them to see that we are supporting all this struggle that they are having, and all this animosity and those rhetoric that is coming from our leadership, and against the immigration and against all the people that is different from the dominant culture through the centuries here. And so it is very important for us. And so I support, certainly, being a Hispanic myself, that the people, Hispanics, many of them, the majority, I would say, won't read a lengthy document. And so a series of videos or even blog eardrops or e-shots, just a very brief ones, as we did, for instance, when the we were calling for the National Day of support for DACA. In few hours, thousands of people were jumping into that and just in the Twitter or things like that because they were reading and they were needing that and in that support. And so I would certainly support a series of videos or a Twitter or something like that, a radio message that Hispanics listen a lot to the radio. And of course, in many places we have the contacts with the Univision, just as snapshots, just like that, in a certain moment supporting them and in their struggle. And the main things of course, with the words themselves and the doctrine of the Pope Francis, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I would say that they will feel that we are with them. And of course, we are struggling as much and supporting as much as we can with the government to change all the kind of immigration laws that we have. And of course, this is a key moment. And of course, especially for the younger people, they will feel like they have a responsibility also to keep on growing and learning about the country and all the laws so that they can be the next generation changing this kind of stuff. So I would certainly support that shorter letter and videos and blogs and all that kind of Twitter that is a new generation indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Elizondo.
Bishop Nestow, followed by Cardinal Cupich.
I just want to speak in favor of the working group's proposal here. That, and we all are certainly aware that the new evangelization is to propose the same good news with new ardor, new expressions, new methods, and to try to meet where people are today in terms of how they're receiving information, how they're being formed. And there's certainly, what I've heard, a lot of common expression of the awareness of the lack of the effectiveness of the document, Faithful Citizenship, but that it seems maybe in trying to approach this with new methods is the use of a briefer letter that would express some of the concerns and even be topical here within the conference, and videos is a good way to accomplish that. Plus, much can be done at the local level in terms of pastoral letters and what we do locally in our own dioceses to be able to bring this about or to express what we are concerned about and the message we'd like to bear to our own people.
Thank you, Bishop.
Cardinal Cupich, followed by Bishop Hartmeyer.
Thank you. I just had a question, and it was prompted by something that Archbishop Lori said and Archbishop Rodi alluded to. Are these new means of communication, whether they're the secondary sources or the videos, to be approved by this body with the 2/3 vote, since it will be, in effect, a document of this conference? Is that going to happen?
That's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
Thank you, Your Eminence. We will expect to submit the video script to the administrative committee and to the body of bishop for its approval.
And will it require a 2/3 vote on all the new documents and the script?
That's, again, a good question.
Yeah, but I think that
Sure.
Archbishop Rodi was right in saying that
Absolutely.
it becomes then the statement of this conference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And would that not then provoke a discussion about the issues that are important to this day?
Absolutely. I'm just trying to ask the parliamentary or somebody to give me an answer.
I can.
Sure. Monsignor.
Go ahead, Monsignor.
Thank you, Your Eminence. There are, at this point, in the regulations regarding USCCB statements and publications, only 4 types of statements that can emanate from the body. The first is a doctrinal declaration. That requires 2/3 vote, subsequent recognitio by the Holy See. A pastoral letter requires 2/3 vote for approval, as does a formal statement is the third type. And finally, a special message requires 2/3. So I would always defer to the parliamentarian, but my understanding is anything of that nature as a statement of the body of bishops would require a 2/3 approval.
Bishop Hartmeyer, followed by Archbishop Lori.
I have great respect for the work of the committee, and this is certainly an important message, but it's also an important time to rethink for whom this message is to be read and embraced and affected. I certainly totally support the social media option in terms of getting the word out of some very, very important social issues that the church, I think, needs to speak about to the largest audience possible. And that would be using podcasts and videos and radio. Use our companion organizations such as the NCEA to get to our schools and our colleges, the Knights of Columbus, Spanish media. There are some powerful ways of getting a message out in a short period of time with real people about real situations that have happened in our lifetime and that are very relevant to a lot of people, Catholic or not. There are social issues that the Catholic Church has, I think, an obligation to speak about. We have a Robert Barron in our midst, and I think we need to use him and use his contacts. He's been very effective in doctrinal and in scriptural productions. I think we can also use his talents and resources regarding these social issues that Catholics need to hear what the Church is saying.
Thank you, Bishop Carmine.
Archbishop Laurie, followed by Bishop Doherty.
First of all, I'd like to associate myself with what Bishop Hartmeyer just said. Absolutely true. We need to use all the channels of communications, all the means of communications available to us. But I also heard that it's important for us as a body of bishops to recognize the moment. And I would certainly agree with that. And to that end, I'd like to maybe ask you, Archbishop, and the working group, what your initial thoughts are about the short letter, which has a chance of being read and would be a statement, I think, of all of us that could be foundational as we head into this cycle. Could you maybe share a little bit of the thinking of the working group about that short letter?
I think our idea was just to put together some of these ideas that you all are talking about today.
Thanks, Archbishop. We didn't put a lot of time yet into the content because it's a very early part in this committee. But one of the things that struck me is the engagement of the body of bishops. And a beautiful way that we can do this, I think, is to use our November meeting well. We have our regional meetings we take seriously when things are prepared for us to get feedback. And I don't know at what point our committee's work will be by that November meeting, but we'll certainly be at a point to be able to share and where there are divides in the road, to be able to hear from brother bishops, because you're correct, whether formally we need 3/3 vote or whatever, we need engagement. We need to be able to say this is our document and this is our video and this is the direction we're going in. So I just offer that as I think, an important next step.
Bishop Doherty, followed by Bishop Walkowiak.
Every time I think about getting at this microphone, I think, I am just a humble bishop. And then after I say what I want to say, people will tell me, yeah, you're right, you're really humble. Your intellect, your apprehension, and so forth. But to pick up on what Archbishop Kurtz just said, that we're just beginning to work on content. And for those of us who've been burdened by studies in epistemology and ecclesiology, is the content about politics and values, or is the content really, who do the bishops think they are? Who is a bishop? In my diocese, it's a great struggle to have people see what my position is, because they feel they don't need much mediation between, let's say, a pope, whoever their favorite pope is, and their parish. And so any document that we issue, really, it has a subtext to it. Who are the bishops and what is our role? And I think that simply makes our role, our job, more complicated in no matter how we communicate. So I would just want us to be aware of that. We talk about, well, who's actually reading print media these days? And I think we have to be humble enough to reimagine our own self and how people perceive us. So I would suggest that we've got that double content going, and it may be too much to expect either a video or print media to carry the whole message of who we are, and to, as a couple of men have already said, take more seriously our impact at the local level and to find our own voice, because we know our people best and we may know which issues are most interesting or neuralgic to them.
Thank you. Especially for reminding us that we are just bishops.
Bishop Walkowiak, followed by Bishop Botein.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of this action item. I think that number 1 and 2 listed there, the short letter and videos and other secondary resources, are well within our reach. I think something else, something more than that is needed, though. One of the things the bishops want in communications is a quick response. And you know, we spend millions of dollars every year on our communications department so that we get out rapid responses on timely issues as they come out. Just this assembly, we had at the beginning of our assembly a statement from Cardinal DiNardo regarding the Attorney General's recent decision about women who lack adequate protection. So, you know, it isn't a week that goes by that we are reading statements from committee chairmen, from the president of the conference, in regard to legislation, in regard to judicial decisions and contemporary events that happen. So I don't feel that the conference is silent or is not speaking in a timely fashion. I mean, we're spending a lot of money to do just that. I think we need to evaluate the effectiveness of that, because probably anything that we issue will probably receive the same response that these statements and these letters receive. On the other hand, I do think that we need something to succinctly express the newness of the approach of Pope Francis. And I don't think we can take for granted that people know it. Bishop Propaki said on his flight that nobody was reading a book. Let's face it, most of Francis's encyclicals go on to 300 pages. There are a lot of people who haven't read Francis's encyclicals and the main points. What they get is what they get from the media. So I think if you take a basket of all the statements and letters that our committee chairmen have issued over the past months, the statements by the USCCB president, and look at those in light of maybe Pope Francis's teaching and approach of compassion and mercy and otherwise, that you might have something to offer. Now, you know, what that means in terms of a video or whatnot, but maybe that's a way to maybe get a grasp on that. So I'm in favor of 1 and 2, but I think there may be a third thing needed.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. Bishop Botein, followed by Cardinal Tobin, and I would like at that point, if possible, to cut some of the discussion because of some other things we're on schedule to do. So, Bishop Botein.
I'd like to thank the chair for recognizing me again for a point of order. Are amendments in order at this point?
What's that?
Is there an amendment? Is it amendable?
Is it amendable?
Parliamentarian.
Parliamentarian, Bishop Malloy. Is this amendable?
I think, according to the normal rules of order, if you're putting something down like this, there is the procedure to ask to amend it. I think it could either be taken as a friendly amendment by the committee, or else it would then enter into a discussion and a formal vote on that to amend the point here. The other possibility, I suppose, is just even for the committee to say, we'll take this all back with the information and any proposals that have come up. I think those would be the options.
It's intended as a friendly amendment, and I would like to propose something along those lines, if I may.
Please do.
Sure.
And that's to simply, because it's how what's going to get commented on in the media, I think, is the vote itself. And I'm very, as I mentioned before, very conflicted about saying, no, we don't want to publish a short letter, and no, we don't want more media. Of course, you do want these things, I believe. So I don't want to stop those things by my vote. But at the same time, I would feel a whole lot better voting for this if we added a third element, which was that we ask or direct the working group to prepare not a document to replace or revise Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, but a brand new pastoral letter of some kind to address the anxieties of our particular time. And if we could include that in the action item itself, or if the committee would accept it as a friendly amendment, I think I will have satisfied my own, perhaps less than faithful conscience.
Yes. What is the working group's thought on this? Do they want to accept a friendly amendment? Is there a powwow they need to do? Yeah. Bishop Otine, do you mean here a formal pastoral letter, or are you looking more generically?
I think that's something that it would abide some reflection. You know, what kind of a document in particular would we need, or what kind of whatever it would be. I think there's something being asked for, and something that's being asked for in a particularly with a little bit of alacrity here, because so. Maybe we can vote on these, and then we bring the other proposal without getting into a 5-year process.
I think what we were talking about is that we can vote on what we have here, and then we bring a new proposal just for the pastoral letter.
Is that possible? I mean, that's adding something new to the agenda.
Yes. No, not today, not on this meeting, no? Well, I don't know what is it. We have time to bring a new proposal?
Good. Brothers, I think what we have to do at this point is either, if he wants to make an amendment, they don't exactly want a friendly amendment at this time. They want to give their document or their presentation.
Well, the challenge with the pastoral letter is that, first of all, I don't know if this working group is able to put together a pastoral letter timely. So we need to really study who is going to be, seems to me, who's going to be in charge of the new pastoral letter. Maybe that's something for one of the committees to be working on that. I'm not sure that we can do that. That's my concern, is that if we commit ourselves to write a pastoral letter, right now, it will be, it's not clear who is going to put it together, in my view. Unless, I mean...
Ordinarily, I believe in the practice of the regulations of the conference, a pastoral letter is such a wide document that wouldn't constitute a friendly amendment per se. That would be its own separate amendment. But again, I would defer to the parliamentarian. But before the body can agree for a pastoral letter, it has to be asked in principle whether it wants to draft a pastoral letter, and then to respond with a majority vote that it wants to have a pastoral letter. But it would seem that a pastoral letter is such a wide proposal that it would come as its own separate amendment, but I would defer to the parliamentarian.
Yes, I don't know that I have much handle on the mechanism for accomplishing this. I just would like something to be said.
I think what Monsignor Bransfield said is correct. I think a couple of things are probably in play here. One is there has to be a clear formulation of what you're looking for. If what is being talked about is an amendment, then it would follow the procedure of the amendment formally being put in front of the body for discussion. I do think what that would probably cover, but it would have to be explicit, what Monsignor Bransfield talked about. We have a two-step process. Does the body wish to take up the idea of an amendment? And then the question of what exactly, or the pastoral letter, then the question would be what exactly is the theme, the content, the thrust of the pastoral letter. So there's a couple of moving pieces here.
So Bishop Otine, do you want to produce an amendment of sorts, which
I did, and I'm a little bit stuck as to how to word it. I think I would like to add it as, do the members authorize the production of 2 new additional elements, 1 and 2, ending exactly the way it's worded, and 3, begin the process. I'm not,
yeah,
and explore the a new document to address the anxieties of our day. That's as a part of this, so that the direction for the conference to begin to explore that be included in this action item.
Does Do you accept that, the committee here? Are they,
We do.
Can't hear you.
So you just want the short letter to be a little longer letter, no?
No, what I'm saying is I think there should be some kind of follow-up, but I sure don't want to suggest.
So you,
I want a promise by us that this is not all we have to say on.
No, I think what you are suggesting is also what we are saying.
I think so.
The proposal number 1 is a short letter. So what you are, it seems to me that what you are interested in doing is not just a short letter, but a little longer letter that is called a pastoral letter.
Well, just some indication that our job, we recognize our job is not done with these 2 items.
Okay.
That something more is going to be needed
Or
down the line.
Monsignor, if it's easier, we can continue what we have and just add a third point saying that explore the possibility of a pastoral letter on this subject. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
but you are willing to accept that as part of your...
We are, no? Yes, we are.
Well,
Yes, yes,
think-
Your Eminence.
Yeah.
And is there any objection in the body to this? There is.
Does that sound okay?
If there's no major objection, we'll just go ahead with that understanding of your own proposal that has been augmented a little by what Bishop Botina said, and that you are okay with that.
Yes.
Is there anyone else that has a problem with that? Somebody has a card. Bishop Coyne.
I'm not ready to vote for that. I think we're so divided right now, and we're unclear on so many places where we want to go. Do we want to actually take a vote on this right now? And in light of what Archbishop Kurtz said about the November meeting, I'd like to make a motion that we table this item, this action item, and call for a vote from the, if that's, I don't know the parliamentary, but I'd like to make a motion that we table it. Table this action item as it is, because we're not, I don't think as a body of bishops we're ready to, are we ready really to take a vote, yes or no, on this proposal? Because we're just so many moving parts right now, I think. And I'm not calling for a nay or a yay on it personally, but I just think we need to get some clarity. Bishop Botin saying now we're going to have a little pastoral letter. There are many of us who are saying, I don't want to settle for a pastoral letter. I want to settle for something that's a new document, and that's the statement of the thing. And I'm worried that by saying pastoral letter is we're going to be settling in a direction that.
Yeah, as I was saying, thank you for your comment. Okay. As I was saying, what the bishop is suggesting is exactly what we are proposing: a letter and videos.
Okay.
So I don't know if we're.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we table this action item for further consideration.
Parliamentarian, I guess.
This requires our parliamentarian here, I think, a minute to come forward.
Your poor parliamentarian. I think there's now 2 things going on. One is we've had an amendment, but it was taken on by as a friendly amendment. Now we've had a second motion to table the whole issue.
Whole issue.
If I understand it. So I think the first question is the amendment has been taken on by the committee, so it doesn't have to be voted. So I think the action to table is probably the next up to be.
That's on the table now.
Before you would then move to the proposed item.
Bishop Soto
I have a second for this. Any comments from you, Archbishop Gomez, relative to they'd like to table this until there is some further work and direction from the working group?
I guess the only challenge is going to delay the process of working on this until we can present to the body again.
Which would be November when you present to the body.
That's the only challenge.
What I would offer in response to it, again, it's respectful listening. We can still start working on scripts for videos and things like that, and that doesn't mean we have to table that in terms of like just some simple staff.
Yeah, but the videos needs to be approved by the body, so we can work on them. But
okay, thank you.
We need a direction. That's my only concern, but that's fine. I mean,
Bishop Soto, I think, has a white card up, so it's.
And Corleone.
And Archbishop Cordileone has a card up.
Well, I was just going to support the motion. Only the thought, we've had a very wide conversation here about a lot of different concerns, and I would think that at least for the working group, this gives you a lot to consider, and perhaps to develop a more robust proposal that would and to further some of the work. That would give the body here more to chew on and to consider in November.
Thank you. Archbishop Cordileone, you had an observation.
Yeah, well, points of order. I'm not clear on exactly what's going on here. First, do some agree with me? First, Bishop Botein proposed an amendment adding point 3 that we will make some additional sort of a statement about what's going on in our society today. Archbishop Gomez said that that was what the committee intended to do with points 1 and 2, and we can lengthen the letter. Bishop Malloy said that the committee took this as a friendly amendment, but as I understand it, that's not exactly what Bishop Botein proposed. Then Bishop Coyne proposed tabling the whole action item, and then is agreeable to doing the short letter and the short video. But that's not tabling the whole action item. So I'm not clear where we stand in any of this.
Archbishop, the motion now is to table the entire process.
I would like to hear from Bishop Coyne, because he later said that he's favorable toward going with the short letter and the videos.
Let me clarify then. Thank you for bringing that forward. I just simply said that given the timetable, if the committee chooses to start to say, you know, if we bring this back and we do get a favorable vote for the videos and other secondary sources, that we've already kind of begun the work. We don't have to stop that kind of work. And I didn't mean to imply that I was in favor of the action item while I'm calling for a table. So thank you for bringing that up.
So we still have Bishop Coyne's.
Yes, and after it's been seconded, it's subject to a 50% vote, so a majority plus 1 to table the item.
And given what is transpired, some richness of discussion, but still a certain amount of difficulty here, I favor that we move this motion and take a vote on whether we should table this action until, let's say, November. Let's do that.
Okay.
We have to vote.
And so the vote is before the body. A yes would be to table the item. To table the item, please vote 1 for yes. You would vote 2 to keep the action open. To not table the item is no. And then 3 to abstain. So 1 is to table is yes. I would ask that the voting be, it is not open yet. I would ask the voting be opened. Voting is open. Please vote now. The voting is closed. Please display the vote. The vote is to not table the item. The item remains open.
So we are back to the item, and we are back to presentation. We had someone who was going to...
Cardinal Troutman, Bishop.
Bishop Troutman, followed by Cardinal Tobin.
The subject matter before us is on forming consciences. I suggest that is a teaching document of this conference, and I suggest we ought to clarify the vote required to pass that document. It's a teaching document of this conference. And there are rules for the involvement of this body in that. So I'm asking, what is the vote required?
I didn't hear it. What is the vote?
To approve a teaching document of the conference.
To approve a document of the conference is a two-thirds vote.
Two-thirds.
There is only a doctrinal declaration, a pastoral letter, formal statement, or a special message. Each requires a two-thirds vote.
Point of order.
We're not voting on the document, we're voting
Right.
on the process.
Correct.
Yeah, we are not voting on the document, we are voting on the process.
And thus far, the process can proceed. From the point of view of, at least we have to vote on it, but to table it right now was deemed by the body to be not good. So we move ahead. Cardinal Tobin.
Thank you for the second opportunity, Your Eminence. I would simply point out a worry of mine that we are juxtaposing medium or media with content, as if to oppose this is to oppose creativity and the use of all the mediatric tools at our disposition. In my mind, it doesn't. The opposition doesn't mean that we stick to simply to print media. There is a connection between the media we use and the derivative document. They're derivative of a document. Now, if we want to expand that brief letter to a not-so-brief letter to give adequate guidance to not simply to those who will read the letter, but to those who will produce the videos or the podcasts or whatever. There is a relationship between the media used and the source document. And I think a number of us are calling for a different source document. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Archbishop Etchen, followed by Bishop Mark O'Connell.
Thank you, Your Eminence, and thanks to Archbishop and our working committee. The reason I would like and wanted this discussion to continue is it seems that the salient points that I'm hearing so far today that I want to make sure we raise again at this moment is that we are in a new time in our country and in the political environment. And it seems to me that even though the recommendation of the working committee are good recommendations in regards to the document itself, I think to recognize that we are at a new time, we simply move on from faithful citizenship. It's played its role in our history, but it seems that, and I would vote against this motion simply because what is more important, I think, in this discussion today is this conference has got to find a greater flexibility to address immediate needs in the political context, the cultural context of our day. And I think by voting down the motion, then there needs to be some other proposal to follow that I think is more based upon a new format and a new way for this body to be able to more immediately respond to the cultural times in a way that allows us as a body of bishops together, united, to lead and to be a voice that is a voice of hope and encouragement and instruction for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Archbishop.
Bishop Mark O'Connell.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I think that what we're struggling with is in new times, there need to be some revisions.
McElroy.
This says specifically rather than revise. I propose a friendly amendment that we say rather than revise or replace, to get rid of revise or, and to replace it with to complement rather than to replace.
Archbishop Gomez.
So that revisions could happen when needed. Get rid of revise or, and say rather than to replace.
So you want to eliminate revise or replace?
It would say now to complement rather than to replace, so that it allows for small revisions or big revisions if the committee thinks necessary in light of the new times.
What is it? Anthony, what is the...
Here's a possible amendment.
Can you read it? I cannot read you.
Here's a quick
lawyers.
proposal. That's right. A quick proposal that might be responsive to the concerns here. As it is now, delete the word short, and then after not to exceed 7,000 words, just as a limit so that it's not as long as faithful citizenship. It might get read more. A letter not to exceed 7,000 words to inspire prayer and action regarding public life, as it is now, and then adding this language, and to address the contemporary situation, comma, and it goes on from there.
But Bishop is suggesting to eliminate, to revise, no? So say it, Bishop, can you please say it again?
Well, my thought was that we need some revisions, so rather than, it says now, rather than revise or replace, I would like to make that phrase to complement rather than to replace, so that revisions could happen as necessary.
Sounds good. It's okay, no? It's okay with you all?
That has to get...
So we accept the friendly amendment.
Yeah, they accept that friendly amendment. Okay, so there's nothing further the brothers have to do with it. Okay.
Can you write it here?
And now we have Bishop McElroy, and I would ask after that we move towards a vote simply because we have a speaker that is on a time frame we have to bring in.
Whatever he said.
Bishop McElroy.
Somebody needs to go over there.
I just have a question for Archbishop Gomez for a friendly amendment, I would hope, that might be able to achieve consensus here, because I think there's very little disagreement on 1 and 2 as they're enunciated now.
Yes.
And simply end it without any reference to faithful citizenship. Simply cut that out. If we're going to a new moment, if we're going to new ways of presentation, I think it's important not to have any sense we're reauthorizing 2015 faithful citizenship. So if you simply did what Anthony read and put a period rather than a comma, so there's no reference to the pre-existing faithful citizenship, that gets the momentum, it gets the new moment, and it gets you the ability to flesh it out the way you need to flesh it out. So are you willing, though, is the committee willing to accept that as a friendly amendment? Because at least that would make a big difference to me in terms of where we see the direction going.
Okay.
Is
Anthony?
Is the working group willing to accept that as a friendly amendment?
Is that a friendly amendment? Can you? No?
I think part of the issue may well be taking out totally faithful citizenship, probably.
It's a big working group.
Yeah,
sure.
It appears that they prefer the amendment that was just proposed to complement rather than to replace the existing, et cetera, rather than putting the period after the second line.
So the working group prefers not to eliminate.
And I'd say the problem with that is it is read as a continuing authorization of that as the foundational statement. That's I'll vote no. But I think we could get to consensus if that were not in there. But anyway.
So no, the working committee decided not to accept.
Okay, they would keep the faithful citizenship, a reference there. Okay.
So,
fine.
I know,
Archbishop.
Sorry, I know you were going to close it off there, and I want to say that even though I'm from Los Angeles, there's no collusion between Robert Barron and myself and the Archbishop. but I would say that we do want to get a new dynamic going forward, so to maybe just another friendly amendment just to try this, to complement rather than replace the existing Forming Conscience for Faithful Citizenship document, and to apply its teaching and the teaching of Pope Francis to the issues of our time or of our day, as a way of bringing Pope Francis's teaching, that we're going to engage that with the issues that we're going to be looking at.
If they accept it.
Do you accept it?
It seems like the working group is willing to accept the amendment. No collusion.
Have they accepted?
They accepted.
They have accepted that. Are there any objections from the bishops on that? I think at this point, friends, good discussion, but also it's reached a point I think we need to make a vote.
I'm trying to put it together, Your Eminence.
Yeah. So, okay. So the vote is Archbishop Gomez.
Sure. I may need the help of Anthony to read what it is. So now, brothers, I ask you to consider action item number 6, on forming consciences for faithful citizenship. Do the members authorize the action item is as follows. Do the members authorize the production of 2 new additional elements? First, a short letter to inspire prayer and action regarding public life. And second, a short video and other secondary resources to complement, rather to replace, rather to replace the existing Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship document, and to apply the teachings of Pope Francis to our day.
This action requires a majority of members present to vote in the affirmative. All members of the conference, diocesan, auxiliary, both Latin and Eastern Rite, are welcome to vote. Please select 1 for yes, 2 for no. The voting window is open for 45 seconds. The voting is open. Please vote now. Seconds on the vote. The voting is closed. Please display the vote. Majority of the body present and voting is in favor of the action. The motion passes.
Thank you, brothers. Thanks, Archbishop Gomez, and to the working group. As is obvious from the discussion this morning, this is going to be subject to much further livelier debate, I think, as we go along, and rightfully so, since the point of views of the brothers are intensely held and logically held, I might add, on all sides. So, Archbishop Gomez, thank you. I hope you'll continue to work on this with the input you've had from today.
Thank you. Thank you to the working group for their support, and to you all. I think it was a wonderful conversation, so we'll work on it and present something next time. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. We're going to do, Grace, I think we're going to go to lunch, but the public session, we still have 2 more themes. So we've thought up here, we'll meet at 2:15 for about 40 minutes to do the final public sessions with Archbishop Kurtz and Bishop Fobb. Then we'll go into executive session. Is that okay with everyone? We want to eat lunch, I think, right now. Most people want to do that. All right, that's what we'll do. Archbishop Gomez, do you want to lead us in the in prayers? The Angelus.
Angelus. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary,
She conceived by the Holy Spirit.
and Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Behold the handmaid of the Lord.
Be done unto me according to thy word.
And Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
And the Word was made flesh.
And dwelt among us.
And Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God.
That we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ.
Let us pray.
Pour forth, we beseech you, O Lord, thy grace into our hearts, that we too, through the incarnation of Christ, the Son, who was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
Bless us, O Lord.
And these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.